Oh, thank you for that clap. Thank you. How lovely. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tania, Bryer, CNBC anchor broadcaster, and it's my absolute honor and privilege to be your master of ceremonies today at the Women's Forum. And it's so wonderful to see all of you here in person. Isn't it fantastic to be back? Isn't that wonderful? We're all here together. Now, it gives me great pleasure and honor to invite Elisabeth Moreno onto the stage. Minister Moreno is a delegate to the Prime Minister overseeing gender equality, diversity, and equal opportunities. She was going to join us for our closing plenary later today, but of course, business of state has taken her away from that. Of course, she's reshuffled her schedule. She said to me just 2 minutes ago, I wouldn't miss this for the world. She's here to fire-start our day, to share her vision of what is uniting purpose and power for an inclusive future, what that means to her. Please join me in welcoming the incredibly inspirational Minister Moreno.
Hey, good morning. Tania, you are on fire. Good morning, Audrey. I don't see you, but I know you are somewhere here. Dear Maurice Levy, I think I've seen Maurice as well. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants to the Women's Forum 2021 Global Meeting. 2 years ago, I was here on stage as the Vice President for Hewlett-Packard Africa, and you can certainly imagine how emotional I feel today to speak to you as the Minister in charge of gender equality for France. I'm delighted to be here with you this morning to share a few remarks ahead of this final day on the theme of uniting power and purpose. Women have been on the front line during the triple crisis, sanitary, economic, and social, to which we have been and still are confronted. Moreover, the pandemic has fundamentally reshuffled the way we work with the rapid adoption of remote work across the globe. And the many impacts of that New Deal must now be carefully thought through. The post-pandemic world of work is more digital and more distributed. And that distributed workforce, more than ever, is in a quest of purpose in which they expect the values of their companies and the leadership style of their managers to align to the challenges of the present times. This new world of work does call indeed for a different style of leadership. A style of leadership that corresponds to many of the strengths that female leaders around the world have been exemplifying for years. A style of leadership which is more inclusive, which is based on emotional intelligence, and which is based on trust and empowerment. I fundamentally believe in the power of human connections and collective intelligence, especially in a context in which people have often lost the personal touch that was coming from daily interactions in the workplace. And I know that female leaders will have an absolutely central role to play at the forefront of these evolutions. I also strongly believe that the time has come to challenge the traditional representation of women's role at home, at work, but also into our entire society. Because nowadays, most women have no choice but to work. And they are trying to do the best thing for their careers while also navigating an very unfairly demanding role in society and at home. Now, I would like to cover the starting point and the next steps of this journey. We will not be successful in implementing a new leadership paradigm if we do not start by fixing a few of the basics that have been undermining the success of female talent for decades. How can we accept that despite being at the forefront of the many battles against COVID-19, from health to the economy, from security to social work, the pandemic has so much exacerbated the vulnerability of women and girls simply by virtue of their sex? This crisis is a wake-up call. It is a wake-up call regarding the situation of 52% of our humanity. That's the reason why each nation, company, and NGO should take a stake in the fight for women's dignity. Because improving women's situation is not just a question of social justice, but it is beneficial to the society as a whole. President Emmanuel Macron has declared gender equality as the great cause of his 5-year term. And the most urgent dimensions to tackle in order to progress towards that gender equality ambition, in the economic sphere at least, are equal pay, the representation of women in the circle of power, and their work-life balance. First, we still live in a world where equal pay is not yet a reality, even though it should be the norm. How can we still accept that in France today, women are paid 15% less than men for the same role? How can we accept that their pensions amount to 42% less than the ones of their male counterparts because of their more fragmented careers? The first move of the government towards that equality in the economic space was to implement an equal pay index in 2018. That index, which is mandatory for all companies with more than 50 employees, measures compensation discrepancies between men and women. Although it has already allowed progress in that space, I am still not happy with the speed at which companies are evolving in their practices. Let me give you only 2 examples and you will understand. Only 2% of companies have reached the maximum score of 100 points. That means that only 2% of companies do not differentiate compensation based on gender, which should be the norm. And even more shocking, 43% of our French companies beyond 50 employees have only 0 or 1 woman in their top 10 compensation packages. 0 or 1. That number also gives a proxy for women's representation in the true circles of powers of the economic world. Although the Copé-Zimmermann law has allowed to go from less than 10% of women on boards to 45% in the space of 10 years, they still represent less than 25% of executive committees amongst the SBF 120 companies. That is why I have been personally giving my full support to the draft law for the acceleration of economic equality between women and men, carried by members of Parliament Marie-Pierre Rixain and Christophe Castaner. I will make mine the words of Gisèle Halimi: the true liberation of women will depend on their full economic emancipation. That law, when it is fully adopted, will create some positive momentum for all our female talent in the country, allowing them to finally break the infamous glass ceiling to which they have been confronted for a long time. 2 measures have specially been taken in this bill. First, it forces the implementation of gender quotas of leadership teams at the level of 30% in 5 years and 40% in 8 years, because that is where the biggest impact will occur. Second, it forces gender quotas for investment committees in public and private investment sectors, because entrepreneurship is key for all our society in the post-COVID world, both in terms of economic recovery and individual freedom. These measures will contribute to change the deal of women leaders in this country. And last, but not least, this government has doubled, under the impulsion of President Macron, the paternity leave to 28 days, therefore allowing a better work-life balance and a better sharing of family duties for young parents. Audrey was telling me earlier today that this new format of the Women's Forum is made of action, and I really believe that we are showing through action how we can accelerate the equality between men and women in our country. Now let me share a few words in conclusion. I first want to commend the Women's Forum and its new managing director, Audrey Tcherkoff, for always being at the forefront of the society evolutions that affect the condition and the role of women across the globe. I think you can do so. And indeed, I also have a thought for Chiara Corozza. I also want to touch to another very important point. And I'm glad that this point is going to be covered in one of your sessions today as well. I want to talk about violence against women. Gender-based violence, hate speech, and disinformation are being used extensively online and offline to undermine women across the planet. We all have an imperative duty to protect women from all forms of violences, to protect their physical and psychological integrity before paving the way for their economic emancipation. You all know that is the #1 combat of my ministry. And finally, the theme of today's session, uniting power with purpose in order to define the right leadership for an inclusive future, is absolutely crucial. I fundamentally believe that this reshaped leadership with women at its heart can be a game changer for economy and society in the post-COVID world. I mentioned before that purpose cannot be dissociated from power in today's economy. It is an attribute that future talents will look at. It is a parameter that investors will consider. And it is a dimension that consumers will consider in their buying and their investment decisions. It is therefore my conviction that these companies who will put purpose at the heart of their ambition will outperform and outlast those who are only guided by financial metrics. With that, I would like to thank you all for your commitment and to wish you all a very successful closing day of this year's global meeting. And I have a final word for you, ladies, before talking to the men in this room. I just want to tell you that our future belongs to us. I just want to tell you that you have, all of you, an innate power that is just requiring you to trust yourself and believe in your ability to change this world. And to the men in this room, I want to tell you that we will not win this battle again. It is not a battle between women and men. It is just a battle for a better society. And if we don't do it for us, let's do it for our new generation. Thank you very much.
Bravo. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bravo. Thank you so much, Minister. That was truly inspiring. Thank you so much. And thank you for starting our forum so beautifully. For those of you who have joined us, my name is Tania Bryer from CNBC. I'm thrilled to be your Master of Ceremonies for this year's global meeting, live from Paris. This is a truly special one. Not only do we have you here in person in our audience, but we have a virtual audience today. Welcome all of you from over 120 countries around the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, these last 18 months have brought to the fore the role of women in our communities, and particularly in crisis. The pandemic has exacerbated the social and economic inequalities that we already knew existed, but also shone the light on the leadership of women. We are here today to reveal some of these inequalities and, importantly, to share practices and solutions that will unlock the leadership of women to address these. The Women's Forum for the Economy and Society is a unique space to achieve this goal because it unites inspiring people, decision makers, stakeholders, leaders, activists, experts, and youth in the conversation of equality. Speaking of youth, we're honored to be welcoming 100 youth delegates with us in person today, and many more online. So are you ready to get started? No? I want more from that. Are you ready to get started? Yes! That's what we want. Well, it's my great pleasure to first pass the floor to the Managing Director of the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society. It's Audrey Tcherkoff.
Thank you, Tania. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et bonjour à tous. So here we are at the 16th edition of the Women's Forum, my first edition as the new managing director. And I would like to start by paying a tribute to my predecessor. So would you like to join me with a round of applause? So, as I am stepping into that new role, we are now facing a gender gap that we now take 135 years to close. How is that for a timing? Well, I like challenges. So I'd better, we'd better roll up our sleeves and get to work. So today is about 160 speakers. It's about 100 nationalities gathered here in Paris at the Carrousel du Louvre and everywhere online. I would say we are a force. And the subject of gender inequality is no longer a side subject. It's mainstream, it's political, it's commercial, it's at the center of boardrooms, of war rooms, of classrooms even. And now, more than ever, has it become more interesting to everyone, men and women alike, to address collectively the toolbox that women and men together, side by side, can achieve. So as you can imagine, I have thought a lot about what I was going to tell you this morning. So initially I wanted to share some figures because it was easy, it was tempting, but the truth is we all know them. So let's only focus on this takeaway. Women today in 2021 account for 70% of people living under $1 a day, and they represent 80% of the climate migrants. Aujourd'hui, face à cette réalité, nous ne pouvons plus nous permettre d'attendre que les choses changent d'elles-mêmes. Et notre ministre Élisabeth Moreno vient de s'exprimer, et ça nous rappelle que 250 ans après que l'égalité ait été instaurée comme un des piliers de notre Constitution, nous avons encore besoin, en France, d'un ministère de l'égalité. So now, let me share a personal story with you. I came across the other day, with my 6-year-old daughter, I came across a picture of Thomas Pesquet, the French astronaut who just came back from space. And she took me by surprise, saying, "Maman, I could never become an astronaut." So I asked why. Now, she didn't reply because she could end up choosing not to, or because of the sheer challenge of doing so, but she said so naturally, because I'm a girl. While everything inside me wanted to contradict her in that moment, the only answer I found was that she could be one of the exceptions to a norm that I don't understand. So if I'm standing in front of you today, it's to make sure that my daughter and all the others can be free to choose their destiny, to realize their dreams, their wildest dreams. I'm fighting because there are still too many situations that I can't explain to my children. Because yes, it's unfair. So before we start thinking about how we can act now, how we can join power and purpose, absorbing the perspective of the speakers that are going to come on this stage from across generation, cultures, genders, background, geographies, we must first acknowledge where we are starting from. Depuis la première édition du Women's Forum, en 2005, à l'époque à Deauville, le combat pour l'égalité a fait des progrès extraordinaires. Et c'est en grande partie grâce à vous, chefs d'entreprise, citoyens, représentants d'associations, représentants politiques, grâce à votre engagement, grâce à vos convictions. Vous êtes chacun, à votre façon, des acteurs de l'égalité. Et nous savons que ce combat n'est pas gagné. Comment pourrait-il l'être? Alors que bien souvent, seule la moitié de la population des talents sont invités à la table des décisions. I was in Glasgow at COP26 2 weeks ago, and I have met with Nina Galinga, a young woman, while world leaders were gathering, as you know, reluctant to keep their promises. There she was, a young indigenous woman from Amazonia, was fighting with all of her heart, soul, for the protection and respect of indigenous land. And she reminded me, she reminded all of us on that day in the room, that given women's position at the heart of the household, providing water, food, energy, they have valuable insights into the challenges and potential solutions to climate change and should be at the forefront of decision making, and yet they are not. I have come from an entrepreneurial background, which fortunately gave me the experience of travel and the exposure. I have certainly seen my fair share of inequality. Now, to be very frank, this pales in comparison to the experience that women from Afghanistan, from Uganda, from Myanmar, and from right here in France shared with us during this week on our digital conferences. So one underlying question is, what do all our future looks like? It's actually a very exciting question, one that has preoccupied me for most of my career and that has led me today to the talent and vision of this great organization. And I also want to thank our very loyal partners who have been here with us today since 16 years. So when we fight today for women's power and purpose, the Women's Forum is not only fighting for the future of female leadership, we are also fighting against the bias that women and girls have unconsciously integrated and which are holding back their confidence, their ambition and their human right to dream. Et si je suis ici aujourd'hui, c'est parce que je suis convaincue que l'égalité n'est pas vouée à rester une ligne d'horizon, qu'elle est à notre portée, que ce combat pour l'égalité, ce n'est pas une question féministe, c'est une question humaniste, évidemment qui concerne autant les hommes que les femmes. So when Anne-Gabrielle Elbronner, who presides the Women's Forum, where is she? She's there. Asked me to join because the time to act is now, of course, I said yes. And I would say this is one hell of a time. And timing is everything in life. So let's make together this 2021 Global Meeting Edition, the edition of action, and enjoy your day at the Women's Forum.